So that I didn't go deeply into a meditation on selflessness there. I resisted the urge. I think maybe we'll talk a little bit first and then uh, might get a chance to do a second meditation tonight, depending on the vibe. Uh, and one reason I didn't is because I think that there's, wisdom. I have this tendency to drop into, emptiness and selflessness, and sometimes we can approach it just on the level of change, impermanence. That's a good place to start. And I think that's where it starts in that section of 100 Days of Care. It starts with that. Um, that being the object of the investigation is this the impermanent nature of our experience of phenomena. It's actually the same, I think, it's the same realization as selflessness. This is, Thich Nhat Hanh was saying this. I'm listening to The Art of Living on audiobook, and he was talking about it as um, impermanence being like through time, things are constantly shifting, and emptiness is that through space, that things are not as they appear, they're shifting. It depends on where you look, right? So I didn't get into it as a part of the meditation, but we'll go back to that. You might have dropped into it on your own. If you direct your attention, you could do it again right now, to the palms of your hands. Yeah, it's like your mind is finding one discrete thing within a vast kind of field of experience. This present moment has, depending on where you take your attention, there's different things going on. And so the fundamentally the job of our practice, the work of our practice, is beginning to see that that's how our reality exists, as something that is dependent upon the perception of it. It's dependent upon the mind that's experiencing whatever there is to be experienced. And so you have, in each moment, you have consciousness arising and an object of consciousness. Um, this is in contrast to our ordinary view, our unexamined view, which is there's a palm of the hand there, there's a hand, there's a body there, and we're coming in somehow to make contact with and observe it, rather than it being something that's arising in co-creation with the mind that's observing it. And you could kind of see that the piece that seems to solidify it is the name. So mere appearance, tingling, temperature, flickering sensations, throbbing, whatever the experience is. When we give it a name, and it's like at that moment it comes into existence, palm of the hand or hand. But we overlook that and we just think there's a hand there. Yeah. There's a hand there that I'm somehow coming into contact with, me over here. So it's kind of unexamined, right? Like something behind the eyes or something in the body that's feeling all the sensations, some center point that is uh, me versus the hand. Yeah, but I was going to back up. So let's back up. So wisdom, panna or panya parami, the synonyms for this are discerning awareness, knowledge, insight. The characteristic of wisdom is clarity. It functions to illuminate awareness. It develops into non-ignorance and non-confusion. The direct cause of insight, wisdom, or discernment is concentration. So concentration, what is it? It's the steadiness of awareness. Yeah. So we develop concentration by developing our mindfulness. Mindfulness remembers to come back again and again. Concentration is the distilling or gathering of the attention. So where it's flitting about here and there, busy, constantly captivated by the next thing. So when we're swept away in meditation, we're swept away into a stream of thought. We forget the body and breath completely. We forget where we are. We're into the story of something. Concentration, mindfulness is bringing it back, come back just to the breath. And the mind becomes concentrated. It doesn't have to be the breath. It could be any object. But you tend to think of it as a single pointed feature. We're gathering awareness so that it's not being pulled apart, drawn apart. It's concentrated, like concentrated orange juice. Rather than thinking of concentration as an activity, think of it as that result. It's the result of single pointedness. It's the result of recalling and coming back and placing. Yes, penetrates, looks inwards. So we've got mindfulness and concentration leading to calm and investigation. So calm, which is shamatha. So that gathering of the mind when it's not, a nice analogy is the surface of the lake or an ocean, right? Unconcentrated mind is turbulent and wavy. As the mind concentrates, it becomes still, it's moving less, and then it becomes more reflective, just like the surface of the water. So if there's a lot of wave and turbulence, you don't easily see the moon reflected on the surface. You might see glimmers of light, yeah, but when the water becomes completely clear, what's reflected in it becomes clear. Like the shape of the moon, on a mirror-like surface, it looks like you're looking at the moon. You see the moon in the lake. So shamatha, calming by mindfulness and concentration, calm, and then the wisdom which is already there, it is able to penetrate because of the calmness. Yeah. So then we begin to see. So we see if we, and it really is an investigation on a small time scale. And like we need to slow right down and investigate the palm of the hand, to go back to this example that I'm using a lot tonight. So we're penetrating into the experience, whatever it is. So palm, instead of saying, I know what that is, and glossing over it and thinking of it on a kind of gross conceptual level, we're going to explore what's the direct experience of it. And the object doesn't matter, right? The palm, the breath, the knee, because what comes into focus is that there's that interdependence, the mind that is experiencing the palm and the mind. It's like they get closer and closer until they're one thing. So the moon and the surface of the lake, indistinguishable. So in the course of, that's where I landed there was in my second point. So we're we're developing discriminating awareness, and it's divided. You could think of it in three parts that we're going to develop our wisdom. And the first part is in learning, in hearing or listening or reading. You know, somebody talks about, hey, have you really looked at the palm of your hand? Have you investigated that quality? Have you investigated, I keep saying palm, but we should just say directly, you know, the thing we're most captivated by is our sense of self, me, the story of me, I, me, mine. So we want to come to a conceptual understanding of insight by hearing about it. Like if you looked, that the body's made up of non-body elements. You know, the self is made up of non-self elements. And we hear that and we think, yeah, it sounds right. Or maybe somebody actually describes, as I've done in the past with the glasses, like if you look for the body's not there. But we can also, discriminating awareness is also around all of the other factors. So we hear about something like loving kindness. We learn about, we have an idea about truthfulness, and we hear instructions on how to increase our ability to be truthful. Yeah. Last week we heard instructions about the 8 worldly winds, so not becoming attached to gain and praise and having a good reputation and pleasure, right? And not becoming averse to their opposites. So we hear these teachings, and the first level that we understand them is at the conceptual level, right? Oh, that makes sense. Some part of that makes sense. Second level of developing our discriminating awareness is to start practicing. This includes practice on and off the cushion. So this is the mindfulness and concentration that's practiced on cushion, investigating the qualities of our experience, looking for the truth of their impermanence, constantly changing. Other ways that we can practice, the level of discriminating awareness of practice is, off cushion. If we're practicing something like truthfulness, we make an intention at the beginning of the day to notice this quality or this aspect. How often am I lying? How often am I being dishonest with myself or others? And the practice of it is the application. So we make the intention, and then we kind of notice, well, was I truthful? Yeah. With any of them? Was I generous? Was I patient? Was patience, and I should say, was patience arising? Was patience a part of my mental state or my mental experience throughout the day? When was I patient? When was I not? So these are all considered practice, where we're putting what we've heard, that first stage, heard or read, we then try it out. Yeah, apply it. The key here with practice is it's almost like a scientific proposal, right? The hypothesis is, if I'm more honest, if I have more loving kindness, if I'm more generous, if I practice letting be, do I notice what's the effect of that? The hypothesis is, according to Buddha, if you practice these, you'll be more peaceful, you'll be less constricted, you'll have less suffering, yeah, be more peaceful for yourself, and you'll be giving these things to others. In your relationships, these qualities will move towards that release, that calm, less drama. So, as opposed to if we're practicing the opposite, we're going around lying and gossiping, we're clinging to our possessions and hoarding, we're impatient and short-tempered. is that leading towards peace? And so it's this direction that this is the path, right? The path is, it's conscious or unconscious, right? So unconsciously, we're on a path, whether we know it or not, because of cause and effect. When we do something or say something, we have a certain attitude or a state of mind arises, it leads to something. It leads to either contraction or release. You could just to keep it super simple, where happiness is the release, the relaxed, open-hearted, and the contraction is the unhappiness, the suffering, the struggle. And it's these two things that we're kind of navigating. If we're doing it unconsciously, it just unfolds. Sometimes we feel good because we happen to be generous. It wasn't, we didn't understand there was a connection. But then we start learning or hearing, oh, your experience of the world is based on this interplay of cause and effect and intention. And so then we become intentional. And then we investigate what's the result. So this application of practice, putting the teachings into practice, that whole process, it's doing two things. One is it's refining our discriminating awareness so that we become better at investigating our ongoing unfolding experience or experience as it unfolds. And the other is we're seeing the truth of what leads to happiness and what leads to suffering. And overall, there's a kind of a clearing away that happens. We just, in seeing the peacefulness of the open-heartedness that comes from these qualities, we naturally develop a desire for more of that. If we're tasting it, it's like touching a hot stove, right? We see that our anger and frustration, our greed and intolerance, our clinging to ourself is causing us pain, and it causes us to undertake actions that cause suffering for ourselves and others. And so as our discriminating awareness improves, as the mind becomes calmer, and we begin to see cause and effect playing out, we will put down what is painful. So that's where it doesn't really matter what you do, but it matters if you watch how it unfolds. Yeah, then you just will. Then it becomes a natural thing. And then that third, so we've got the first one is learning, conceptual understanding of these ideas of cause and effect, things like impermanence and non-self. The second is practicing and investigating, both formally in meditation and in our daily life. And then the third is realization, where we have these moments of insight while practicing, where we see clearly. And sometimes they're just brief glimpses. Like we have a good meditation, the mind becomes concentrated or our attention becomes stable, and we investigate, the selflessness of phenomena, of the body, of the mind, of the everything. And we have a moment of clarity. Oh yeah, I see. I had a very brief taste. I don't even know if it bears describing. Like, I don't know how much benefit there is in describing, but it was on a retreat a few years, like 8 or 10 years ago now in Guelph, and a week-long silent retreat. And we're doing for those of you who've come for a day or for the weekend, we're, alternating between seated meditation and walking and everything in silence. So the mind becomes very gathered, very attuned. You kind of, you see a drop of water on a leaf, and it's like glorious. It's because our mind is, we're able to see just that for a moment. We see just, some moment. And there was a flash. It was maybe 4 or 5 days in. I'm doing a walking meditation. There's a windows along one side of the room, and I looked up, and there was these beautiful gardens that the Jesuits tend to and care for, and I saw a flower. I don't even know what kind of flower because I'm not a gardener. It was, and in that moment, because the mind was so calm and concentrated, I saw the kind of the birth and death of the flower in that moment, and it come into existence by my naming it, oh, flower. And that other than that, there's nothing there. Other than that confluence of consciousness perceiving it and this thing that's coming in and out of existence. A flower is a really good example because we see it grow from a sprout and then bloom, and then it dies. And we can see the impermanence of the flower. Okay? But all things are like this. We are like this ourself, as a human being. We bloom and then die. But if you slow it down, the frame rate right down, and you're looking for flower, it's not, or self, it's not there. But that's another good way into it, moving pictures. How are they created? By individual frames sped up. But as you drill down, there's nothing there without that context. Does that make sense? Without it unfolding and us giving it a name and elaborating on it as a story, it's just a kind of flickering. We start to get a taste of this groundlessness, and it's kind of the ultimate this, right? Where this is the release, this contraction is suffering, and this release is the end of suffering. And the groundlessness of all phenomena, the fact that they don't abide in time or space, is that kind of ultimate open palm, or the ultimate lack of suffering, struggle. How is this landing for people?